Hey, this is Mark with Comics, Beer, and Sci-Fi. Well, folks, it's that time of the year where the Super Bowl comes and goes and we start to sink into our mid-winter depression, but hope comes right around the corner with the Great Lakes Comic-Con. And as usual, joining us is the showrunner himself, Mike DeSantis, to tell us about this year's show. Take it away, Mike.
Well, hello, Mark, and thanks for having me. I love the intro. That was great. Pulling you guys right out of the doldrums of, I don't know, whatever February brings here. But no, I mean, we're hyped as always. You know, we our 14th year, if you ignore the ones that we had to skip like everyone else had to. But since 2010, we've been running the show and we're moving along as always. This year, as you guys know, we typically do a theme of some kind or something that we're trying to wrap things together on. This year, what I tried to do is this whole thing about anniversaries. And of course, it's not our anniversary, but, you know, we looked at, 2024. Well, in 1984 was the first appearance of the Transformers. So like, okay, 40-year anniversary there. We've got, I don't know how much you want right now at the beginning, but I'm going to keep right on plugging along. But Noah Hathaway with Neverending Story, 40-year anniversary of that. We've got Land of the Lost, which is the 50th anniversary, because that was 1974. And of course, we have the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which was also 1984. So that's kind of how I'm trying to thread things together, if that makes sense. And I don't know if everyone knows this, but I mean, that's one of the things I try to do. I just don't know how evident that is as people come to the show and they might wonder, well, why do you have this guest or that guest? I truly do try to have some kind of thread weaving through that we celebrate something. And as you said, too, if it gets people out, from the gloomy, I mean, I was salting my driveway. It's all ice. I'm up near Romeo. And everything's still a sheet of ice. I don't know how it is where you guys are, but so it is kind of gloomy, not much sunshine every day, in February. But we're hoping this brings people out and that they're excited to see what we have. So kind of like an anniversary theme, if you would. It's just did not coincide with our anniversary because next year is the 15th anniversary of the show. But that's kind of what we decided to do with it. So that's where we are. We have other guests as well, but those are kind of the main themes that we're trying to portray at this show.
So what are the artists that you have coming this year?
So from Marvel, we got Bob Budiansky, who was the editor at Marvel and later the writer for the Transformers series. And he's credited with lots of stuff. I don't know how many of you are Transformers fans or people watching this, but what you know about the Transformers comes from Bob Budiansky. It was basically, from what I understand, thrown on his lap. Here are all the toys. You need to name them and come up with the storyline. And so all that stuff was devised. I don't know if it was him alone or if there was a group of people. I plan on talking to him about it at the show when I meet up next weekend. But a lot of that was his, he came up with the name of Megatron. He came up with the name of Starscream. And so that's just really cool when you're looking at the history of some of these things. And then, of course, for Turtles, we've got a lot of the original Mirage crew from the late 80s. We've got Dan Berger coming, who did a lot of the art on certain issues there. Along with Turtles Adventures, Steve Levine, and we've got Jim Lawson. Jim's been at the show before. He actually did one of our variants back in 2018, but then Jim's back again. We have Noah Salt coming, and Noah does the variant covers along with Jason Moore, and you guys know Jason pretty well, of the Lost Years for the last Ronin series for TMNT. So that's the big. So we got Angel Medina as well. And, the various local people, as we always say, but we love them just as much. Keith Pollard's coming, Arvell Jones. No Bill Mester-Lobes this year. I think he's taking a break from shows for a bit. But otherwise, that's kind of the lineup right there.
Okay. So like in terms of dealers, any new exciting dealers you have coming to the show that?
Well, as always, I mean, we really try to slate this as comic books and toys. I mean, we try to stay away, do some of the pop culture. Like I said, Neverending Story. We've got Noah Hathaway coming. Excuse me. We always have our wrestling guests. But we try to focus mostly on comic books and toys and the artists that are, kind of in that realm as well. So we've got kind of the regular, the big dealers that are coming that you're aware of. You see them all the time. We do have some other ones coming. We've got a couple coming from out of state. And what's interesting too, I know this wasn't your question, but it just came to mind. We actually have people coming from overseas, not as a vendor, but I've already people reached out to me. Someone from Ireland is coming because they're a huge fan of Noah Hathaway and the Neverending Story and wants to interview him while he's here. So, it's just kind of interesting what ends up happening, as you're going through your emails and messages and who reaches out to you. But yeah, we definitely over 150 vendors total between the Artist Alley, the makers, the crafters, and the actual vendors that sell the comics and toys.
So with the never-ending story, are you guys going to do some kind of like sing-along with the never-ending story song, possibly do some kind of competition who can sing the best song?
Right. Well, I will not be participating in that myself. I don't know. I actually almost think the songs will come more from the Land of the Lost crew, because they love that melody and they're always singing that along with, the people who come to check them out. But you know what, Mark? We'll see. We'll see if it happens. I'll let you know, and maybe we can get you in there too. I don't know.
Any new challenges this year with the show? Any issues?
Hmm.
Anything different that you had to experience that you haven't done in the past?
Not necessarily different. It's almost, I almost want to say like same old, if you know what I mean by that. As you know, we've had we had a guest cancel last week, and something where, I mean, it sucks when it happens. It's awful, and it's not something you plan for. But what do you do at that point? And here we are. I was talking to you before we turned the camera on and started recording. I'm kind of responding to Facebook messages and things like that I mentioned. And it'd be nice to bring in a replacement because, Hockey Talk Means not coming, but it's really challenging to bring someone in 7 days or less before the show. Not everybody's schedule is wide open. So we do not plan on bringing a replacement in. So when you talk about challenges, there's two big ones. Number one is that one, guest cancellations, which is out of everyone's control. The second is always the weather, which is always fun. I smile and say, welcome to Michigan in February, as you know. Last year at this time, if you recall, I remember this like it was yesterday. We had a major ice storm, if you remember, literally like 12 hours before the show. In the city of Warren, where the show takes place, everybody lost their power, except the college. So that saved me from a heart attack there. But all jokes aside, we were able to run the show and keep it going. So I'm already looking at the weather. I have been since it was 10 days out. Looks like it's going to be okay. It's going to be a typical February day. But yeah, the challenge is really guest cancellations and the weather. And neither one, and that's why it's such a challenge. I can't control either of those. So you just kind of have to ride it out and hope for the best.
So when you have those cancellations, does that affect like pre-sales a lot, with the show?
It does. On occasion. I mean, there are times we'll do photo ops, as you know, and we'll say, pay for photo ops ahead of time, this and that. And then, of course, when the guest cancels, or if they cancel, you have to refund those photo ops, obviously. This year, we're not doing official photo ops. It would just be photos at the guest booth. So there was nothing to refund in that respect. But, if someone were to reach out to me and say, the only reason I was coming was for Hockey Talk Man, then, of course, we would respond and, be as cooperative as we can for, refunding money. I don't want to force anyone to come who doesn't want to be there, obviously. But yeah, that can be a challenge as well. We had it last year. I don't know if you remember the guest, but we had Bill Eadie, we had Axe on there, one of the wrestlers, and he actually caught COVID like a few days before, so he had to cancel. So we had to refund some of those photo ops. But again, that's just part of the game, part of the business, So
besides running the show, we know that you're also a dealer. And so tell us a little bit about your experience dealing and how long have you been dealing? Because everyone knows you just, mostly as the guy that runs these shows, but you also, like I said, sell comics. And so tell us a little bit about your experience doing that.
Well, let's see. How much time do we have? Just joking. But no, I got into as long as I want. That's awesome. Don't know if my wife would agree. She's like, how long are you going to be doing this tonight? I'm like, I'm going downstairs. I'll just be a little bit. But we can go as long as we want. Awesome. The story I tell with this, I think we all have similar stories if you sell comic books and stuff. Basically, the collection was getting very big. And, being married and having a bedroom condo at the time, one bedroom was just the toys in comic books. So things had to go. So I started selling. This is like the mid to late 90s. So it's showing my age there, of course. And I was on eBay really early, way back in the day. Yahoo used to have auctions, if some of you guys remember that, if you're a dinosaur like me. And I had those stores going. But on the positive side, it ended up doing well because, people are buying and selling online all the time, that I actually started accumulating inventory, which started getting bigger than the collection. And then next thing you know, what the plan was to downsize, I actually was having more, if that makes sense. So then it was, okay, well, I got to start selling at shows, this and that. And it turns into a nice little side hustle, if you will. This is not my full-time job, as you guys, I'm sure, are aware. I have a full-time job like many of us do. So the Comic Con is just kind of on the side and doing shows on the weekends and stuff I do on the side. And so, yeah, as time went on, I just started setting up at shows. And then at that time, we started in 2010. So right before that, I mean, there weren't that many shows back then, if you guys were in the mix at the time. I mean, of course, you had the Novi show, and I think might have been doing twice a year at the time. Detroit Fanfare had one or two shows at that point. There wasn't much really going on. So we decided, well, let's try it ourselves. And as you know, we started, small VFW Hall, and it kind of grew from there. And by 2013, we went to Macomb Community College, and we've been there ever since. But with the big show, but we also run the small ones, as you know, at Trinity Lutheran and stuff throughout the year. But yes, I do set up at shows. The way the game is now, if I can call it a game, is of course I'm there to sell comic books, but I'm also there to promote. So if I go to, Cherry Capital Con up in Traverse City, it's a wonderful show. Not only am I setting up to sell my stuff, but I'm there with my flyers, I'm promoting, talking to dealers, and sometimes the guests too. And that's one thing I try to do because right now the show is so well established. It's easier getting guests now than it was even, 6-7 years ago, because people have heard of the show. And I actually have people reaching out to me. Honky Talk, for example, Honky Talk, he reached out to me directly. Yeah, I heard about your show. I want to come. I'm like, awesome. So we brought him in. But when I go to these other shows, I'm also kind of fishing for guests, talking to agents, etc. So it's also part of the networking now. So yes, I do set up at shows. I do sell my stuff. But it's also kind of intertwined also with, Great Lakes Comic Con.
Also, when you're setting up at shows and trying to promote your other shows, those showrunners are really receptive to you promoting those shows, correct? I mean,
Sure. But it depends on the show. Yeah, I don't, slide in like a snake and do whatever. I mean, I always talk to the promoter. Do you mind if I do this? Some say yes, some say no. And of course, if they say no, I'll keep stuff in my booth. When somebody buys something, I'll slide something into the bag. I feel that that's, allowed. But I won't set stuff out on tables and, you know what I'm saying? Go around and actively try to, recruit people. But there are many, I've got some really close friends now that are showrunners in other shows, just because we kind of connect. And then they send me the flyers. There's a pulp show in Pennsylvania that, he sends me his flyers. I'll have them on display at my show in February next week. And he'll have a bunch of my flyers when he does his show in July. So
it shouldn't be a problem if they're not all on the same day, right? I mean, that's
right. Well, yeah, of course. And I always tell, I know I've talked about, I repeat myself a lot, I guess, and a lot of these talks I have with people, but I'm a firm believer there's enough room in the sandbox for everybody to play. I really mean that sincerely, but there's a caveat. If it's the same weekend as another show, then we have a problem. If it's the same vicinity as another show and the same weekend. So that's where I'm kind of like, yeah, sure. If you're out of the zone or out of the region, or if you're just an entirely different month, what's the problem? There's enough room for all of us to play. And this is where I get my little, I don't know, pet peeves, but I'll say a pet peeve. I kind of roll my eyes up when, people do try to challenge you. I don't know how else to say it, but there are shows that will try to put their show as close to yours as possible. And maybe it's an accident. Maybe they just don't look at the calendar, but sometimes I feel like, what are they trying to do? And so I try to be very mindful of that. Going back, like I said, to 2010, when I first started the show, and this, I don't know how, again, what your ages are or the ages of the viewers who are watching this, but back at that point, there was only one show there were one little ones here and there, but the regular show in the area is the one in Livonia, which still exists, as you're aware. And it was always on Sundays. So that's when we started doing Great Lakes. We're like, you know what? We don't want to compete, and we can't compete with that, nor do I want to. That's why we started doing Saturdays. The whole point was, if we do a Saturday, there is no way we will have a schedule conflict. And we're a good hour or so away from that show anyway. And that's when we started doing Saturdays. And like I said, this was 2010, 2011. There was actually pushback from people because people were so used to the shows just being on Sunday. It's like, well, wait, why are you doing them on Saturdays? And so I thought that was interesting. Then, of course, now they're on Saturdays and Sundays or whatever these days. But it was just interesting that I feel like we were one of the first to start doing them regularly on Saturdays. And like I said, there was some pushback. Not in an overly negative way, but just people asking the question, like, wait, I thought Comic-Cons were always on Sundays for the small local shows. And we're like, well, yeah, some are, but this one's on Saturday. So when you say there's a lot of shows, I feel like we should all be able to get along. And I think we do overall. But the concern I would have is, yeah, if you're setting up, 2 blocks away, the weekend before, weekend after, weekend of, that I feel is kind of foolish. Because all you're doing is it's hurting each other, if that makes sense. Now customers and dealers have to make a decision. Am I going to this show or that show? Which one am I going to go to? And I think that kind of hurts what we're all trying to do, which is to, promote comic books, promote toys, and get people, as you mentioned, and I got to add it onto it, but getting them out of the doldrums of, hey, it's February, it's Michigan. Oh, I can go have some fun over here. So again, long-winded response, but that's where I am with that. Yeah, I'm going to Toledo, Fantasticon.
Yeah, that's right. That's coming up. Definitely going to that.
And I'll be, have you guys ever gone to Cherry Capital up in Traverse City?
No.
That is my favorite show, even more than they do such a great job up there.
Who down there? I know Brad goes to that, right? Is Brad?
Yeah, Brad goes. Jason Moore is usually there as a guest. It's not, I'm trying to think of how to say this. Um, it's a comic book show, but they usually just have one or two guests. Like last year, I think they had like Ron Mars and Daryl Banks or something, but they have a lot of local artists who come and set up. And the guy who runs it is an artist himself. So it's more focused on like the independent artists. For the vendors area, though, the comic book dealers, it's usually me, Brad, Todd Lang, and there's like maybe two others. Like there isn't a ton of comic book dealers there, but it's a very fun show. They do a great job with it.
Have you ever been to Lang's store over there? And
yeah, I was the road trip out.
I was just there like a week ago.
He almost owns that whole mall. I mean,
I know.
It's like it's realm. It's awesome.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, he's a good, and it's a great destination. It's always Memorial Weekend. You know, the weather's decent. Go up there, and anyway, suggesting it.
We've talked about we're gonna start trying to hit more Ohio shows.
Mm-hmm.
You know, coming up because it just I personally want to go down there because I want to see some of the dealers that are from the South. You know, and we're also. Have you done Heroes Con in Charlotte?
I've gone to it. I've not set up at it. I feel like it's way out of my league. I mean, those deals. Have you gone there?
No. We met Shelton at the Gem City show last year.
Okay.
And
there's lots of big wigs. I mean, you go there, like, you know how Todd Lang has like 4 city blocks when he sets up his stuff at, Motor City or something. Just about every dealer is like that at Heroes Con. You go, they've got 50 longs, they've got all these comics that are like, Amazing Fantasy 15, 2 or 3 on the wall, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I can't compete with that personally, so I don't set up there. But I've only gone once though, but I loved it. I can't wait to go again. I usually tag along with Jason more because Jason.
Okay. You just go there as a guest, I see. All right.
I'm his +1, so I get the hotel room. I got to sleep on the floor, but at least, hey, it's free.
Yeah. Well, they get some good stuff. That's what I want.
The other one is I've done the Fanboy shows. Not Fan Expo, but Fanboy. We did a Knoxville show again. Jason was a guest and I went with him, and that was fun too. I mean, it's to get out a little further from the region or the zone. And
yeah, exactly.
That's what I would too. So I'm handing out flyers, and what's cool about it, I was at the Heroes Con and people heard of the show. I was talking to a guy who was from Florida, and I handed him a flyer. He's like, "Oh, I heard about that show." And I'm like, I was on like cloud 9 the rest of the weekend. I'm like, "Oh, someone heard of the show." So it's kind of cool. Yeah.
I'm at that point where I keep seeing a lot of the same dealers up here, and it's, if they don't get any new stuff, it's like, and I'm looking for specific things, and, so it's harder to find stuff now these days. And I need to venture out further out to get, look for that stuff.
Yeah. Cause the other thing I've been doing is I've been going to a Milwaukee show every other year. There's one in Green Bay. I try to go somewhere where it's like, a day of travel. Like I don't want to drive and have to stay overnight somewhere and drive like Heroes kind of had to do that. It was 11 hours. You can't do that in one stint. But Green Bay wasn't bad. It was about 7 hours. And that's a great show. That's Thanksgiving weekend. But there aren't a lot of comic books. The reason I say it's great, there's only like me and 3 other dealers there. All the rest are just knick-knacky stuff. But I do very well at that show. Same thing with the Milwaukee show. So yeah, there's other stuff out there.
That's what it seems like a lot of shows have turned into, like you said, the knick-knacky type stuff. And the Motor City was starting to turn into that. But this last one, I don't know, did you go to the one in the fall?
I haven't gone to the fall.
Yeah, that one, they actually started bringing in more dealers again, more comic dealers, because they were getting a lot of criticism. What happened was I reached out to Reese Comics on Facebook and asked them, "Are you guys coming to this next show?" And they said, "We're not coming back to Motor City until he only does one show a year and he brings more dealers in there, because it wasn't worth their time, because they do a lot of buying too. And the last time they were here, they couldn't buy much, they didn't sell as much, because I wanted to see them because they had really high quality stuff that I was looking for. And they they just outright like kind of dissed Motor City, saying, "We're not coming back to that show." And a lot of people saw that post because it was on a public forum. And I'm sure Motor City must have got wind of that, because the next show, they added like 10 new comic dealers into the show, and it just seemed like it was a little different this last time than it was previous years. And
that's where I'm doing myself. I tried reading comic book and toy dealers,
Yeah.
I do have a few, I'm not into this at all, but I know my daughter is. I do have a few anime dealers coming in. So I'm going to see how that goes. Just like how the clientele responds to it, because as I always talk about, I mean, you, me, Deborah, we're kind of close in age. I'm 52. I don't know how old you guys are, but I
53.
see the gray beard. Yeah. So, um, but I think about this, that, we're all into those comic books of like the 70s and 80s, but we're the old folks, what's going to bring the younger people in. And,
Well,
but
I was talking about there's a lot of these people selling their little trinkets, and it felt like an art fair more than actually, a Comic Con.
Right. And you know what? I do have a couple of those coming in, but you just have to try to limit them. It's almost like the pop stealers. I mean, if you start letting pop stealers in who just do pops, you could have a whole show of just pops everywhere, so I try to limit that as well. Anyway, yeah, it's just trying to focus on the comics and toys. And that's kind of the reputation I'm trying to build, which I think it's getting there. People like, Heroes Con, their reputation is it's just comic books, and I think Gem City's trying to do that as well, where it's just comic books. That's the same thing I'm trying to do. Although I do bring in the wrestler, because we do have our, lots of customers who come just for the wrestlers. But I'm trying just to make it a comic book show. But when you do that, I mean, I'm not going to get 20,000 people, unfortunately. I wish I would. I think if I drag my wife to a show, I'm looking at comic books, she's going to go look at that kind of stuff. So if you don't have any of that, I think that can
Well, you should have some, but yeah, it just seemed like the balance was getting a little off there with all that.
Yeah. And I heard Motor City's I heard the October show is not that strong at all. I think they're trying too hard to do 2 shows a year.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's just a territory thing, if they're trying to compete with Grand Rapids or maybe something else that's happening at that time, or if I don't know. But I think a lot of people save their money for the show, and let's say they blow it all in May or whatever. It's really tough, I think, for a lot of people to save up again for October show. Dealers and attendees. I mean, those booth prices are not cheap. So we'll see. I mean, they did it for a while, then they stopped, and now they're trying to build it up again for a, fall show, but we'll see.
Okay. Well, we don't want to keep you all day, Mike. So the show is next week, Friday and Saturday. Where can people get tickets at online? Where would they go?
So go to our website, GreatLakesComicCon.org or GreatLakesComicConvention.com. I've got different URLs. They all filter in the same place. But it's through Eventbrite. The link is on the page. You don't have to buy tickets in advance. We sell them at the box office, $20 admission for each day. Kids 10 and under are free. And if you want, I mean, the only thing the advance ticket does is it usually gets you in there a little quicker. Because we hit that line. I mean, we've got different lines that, one takes cash, credit card, whatever, but the advanced ticket holders, those usually go quicker to get in the venue. I'm looking at, we got our program started for the show, and Noah Salt, who is the artist that I mentioned earlier on Last Road in Lost Years, Jason Moore's the inker. So we got the cover for the Comic-Con program here, and notice how we left a lot of blank space on the outside. So the idea is, signatures, remarks, whatever you need to do. And then for fun on the back, I haven't shown this yet, but I'm actually going to be posting this on social media in the next couple of days. So not sure when this video is going to come out. So I don't know if you'll preempt that or if I'll post it before you guys do this. But we have developed our own characters for the show, and we call them the Great Lakes Kids. And just kind of my own little brainchild there. And Jason Moore helped out with, the how they look. And we usually draw them as little kids, of course. Well, I asked Noah Salt, the artist, can you draw me the, Great Lakes Kids as the Ninja Turtles? So these are the Great Lakes Ninja Turtles, I think is what I have. Or Teenage Mutant, they're not turtles. Teenage Mutant Ninja Great Lakes Kids. Copyright. Just kidding. There's a cat there too, because there's obviously 4 turtles. We only have the 3 kids. I have concepts for others. I mean, and this was something originally I was trying to come up with a concept for like a comic book of some kind. I still have some ideas for it, but I don't know if I'm there yet to try and do it. But we added a cat in the family. So apparently the cat is sitting here as well. So Noah Salt drew this, Jason Moore inked it, and my daughter, Mike DeSantis, actually colored it for us. My daughter's an artist.
And she's huh?
Yeah, she's the colorist. She's the colorist.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, so kind of a proud dad moment here too. But this is the show program. As you know, we always do the oversized program, which I know drives the comic book collectors crazy, but this is what we do. It holds more info. But show passes are on there. These are things I had online as well. We've got The Last Road, and these are all by Seth DeMoose, wonderful artist to be a guest at the show as well. And of course that reflects, our passes always reflect the guests. So obviously we got Last Road and artist Noah Salt at the show. So we've got, even though Noah didn't draw this one, but that's conceptualized off of that. Megatron. So we got Bob Budiansky, right? Early involvement with the Transformers. And then of course, Falcor, the Luck Dragon from the Never Ending Story. So again, just trying to hit all the different spots. But yes, next Friday and Saturday, so February 23rd, 24th, McComb Community College South Campus as always. And I'll be there smiling and happy and hoping for a great show and a great turnout. And I'm sure I'll see you guys there as well.
Well, thanks a lot, Mike, and appreciate you joining us. And this is Mark with Comic Experience Sci-Fi with Mike DeSantis of the Great Lakes Comic Con.